All right. So welcome everybody. Today we are working on the top dollar method, and this is basically just what to do and how to think about charging really premium prices to your clients and how to literally do it. We're going to go over some business strategy today and also how to get your mind and your body and your heart, to be on the same page so that way you're not all wobbly and like full of self-sabotage in the moment of your sales. So a thing that I just want to mention here. So when I'm working with clients, almost all my clients are service-based business women. And I do want to mention that what we're going to talk about today is probably not appropriate for every single business that's out there. This isn't going to be like a great fit for e-com. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to mention that. Oh, my cat's here. All right. So basically this kind of plan works really, really well for people who want to make a lot of money, but also want to work like a 4 or 5 hour work day. All right. So if that's something that you want, if that's like a fit, this is the right place to be. If that's not what you're looking for, then this talk might not be the most awesome for you. All right. All right. So that's it. I have my notes in front of me. So all right. So when we think about scaling our business, right? And so scaling our business often requires that we're gonna very likely increase our prices, very likely decrease the amount of clients, like the amount of client avatars that we serve. So there's a lot of dialing in when it comes to scaling, right? Because we can't do 1,000 things. Now, if you guys are like me, when I first got started in business, I was trying a lot of different shit. I was working with different avatars. For a minute, I was working with teachers. For a while, I was working just as money coach, and then I got into business, right? And so there's a season of business where we're information gathering, we're learning how we like to work. And I do want to point out that that level of experience is going to be really important for you to have, right? Because when you go to scale, we want to like the one of the most important things that you have is like crystal clarity. And also the confidence that comes with like knowing that you got this, like you've done this before, this isn't your first rodeo. So that's the other thing. So when we get started on all right, so like when it comes to like really charging top dollar and making a shit ton of money and not too much time, we want to start by really getting clear around how much money do I want to make, right? And so we want to be thinking about this in terms of revenue, your take home salary, and your profitability, right? So we want to get clear here. Now, also, we need to consider this in the context of your life. Like, how many hours a week do you want to work? What kind of work do you want to be doing? Do you want to be seeing clients in the nighttime or early in the morning? Like, we have to set some lifestyle level parameters around this to make this make sense. So we want to clarify that. And that's just like some real big picture stuff, right? Then we need to do like the reality check, right? So we want to clarify the destination. Then we want to do the reality check. So we want to look at the math. We want to say, does this math? Does it make sense, right? Recently, I got a new client and she's doing some consulting, right? She's doing some nonprofit consulting. She came to see me and she was thinking about charging $3,000. She wants for an offer. She wants to make $1 million a year. And I was like, all right, well, that means you have to sell like 300 of these things, which means multiple sales calls every single week for you to hit that goal. I was like, do you want to do all that? She was like, no, I really don't. And I was like, all right, well, let's look at switching up this offer and changing the price. So we changed her $3,000 offer. We increased the value of the offer itself, and then we increased the price to 10,000. So now she's going to do 100 in a year, which is two sales, probably 2 to 3 sales calls a week, depending on her close ratio. And so we have to look at the math. Does the math make sense? And more or less, the question is really like, am I willing to work this hard? Do I want, when I look at because like a lot of times we get really focused on the outcome, the result. We're like, I really want that result. But when it comes to like the process, we just like ignore that. So when it comes to your business, you're going to be in the process of building this business. You're going to be in the process of this a lot, like a real lot. So you want to make sure that you are working toward an outcome that you want, but also that you can love this process, right? Like if you have to work in a way that feels like survival mode, if you have to work hours that you don't want to work, if you have to work more than what you want to get to this outcome, like what did we win? Nothing, right? You guys, that's my little fart noise for you. I hope it delighted you as much as it delighted me to do it 2 times. All right. Okay. We also need to do a little math around the cost to get leads and the cost for a sales acquisition, right? This is going to be real important information as you go to scale. You got to know the numbers. All right. And depending on your business, you might have other KPIs or other numbers that are going to be really critical to your success. And we need to understand those things so that way we know what we're keeping track of as we do this. And I want to point this out because you guys, I'm going to share. So in 2020, I went to go scale my business and I had an EIDL loan. And so I was spending all of this borrowed money and I hired a marketing agency and a sales team. And we were really, it looked like we were really crushing it. But we weren't like exactly crushing it. Like I was making a ton of money, but I was losing money every month. And because I was so new, because I made a lot of mistakes in that year and I don't want that to happen to you. So anyways, we need to know exactly what we need to keep track of and how that all plays together, right? Okay. And now from there, as you start to understand what it will actually take to do this, then you can start to calculate like, how does this impact my lifestyle, right? So how big of a team do I want to have? And I want to just point out here too, because a lot of times when we go to scale, it really changes fundamentally what we do in our work. And that can be awesome or it can not be awesome. And so this is where getting clear around this makes a lot of sense before you start turning up your ad spend, before you start doing these things. So that way you have your process, your road outlined, and the goal outlined. All right. All right, and so then we're just going to look at your capacity, right? And a lot of times this is going to really require us to look at our own wealth identity and the places where our emotional range isn't going to be big enough to hold the things, or the places where our nervous system gets a little on edge, or the places we don't feel safe, right? Because when it comes, so like when we're scaling our business, we have our business strategy, right? We have the literal things like we need to turn up our ad spend, we need to sell this at this amount of offers, we need to track these KPIs, we need to be doing this to get the business to grow. But as the business grows, we also need to personally grow, because what will happen if the business grows before too big before your personal development grows is going to topple over. And if you like are in the business community, this shit happens all the time. All the time. So we need to make sure that our lifestyle can handle and that our mindset can handle the business, that our emotional range can hold it, that our body, our nervous system can hold all of this, and they need to basically grow simultaneously, right? All right, so that's like the first section. So we have to, as we start to scale and we want to really look at charging top dollar prices, once we begin with that end in mind, then we can start to really look at like pruning. Pruning sounds like, I don't know, a word that I don't like. All right. But oftentimes when it's time to grow, we need to basically cut away the things that are not productive. So oftentimes this is going to be looking at outdated tasks that shouldn't be on our plate anymore, offers that don't necessarily make sense anymore, audiences that aren't the fit anymore, right? And I'm going to tell you a quick little story here. So one of my clients who I worked with for a couple of years a while ago, she recently came back to Limitless Wealth. And so I'm looking at her business model. And so she basically has 3 tiers of her business model. So she does events, right? And so she was selling these ticketed events, and the profit margin on ticketed events is almost nothing. It's enough to pay her team. She's making very, very little money after all the expenses are paid on this. And when we were working together years ago, this was like her major focus. Right. And as we were working together a couple of years ago, we started working on these events that she would call private events. So she was taking her events to college campuses and doing things like that. And so then the profit margin on these things, this is like a $3,000 event where these are, $50 tickets, probably less than that, probably like $35 tickets. Right. And so these $3,000 events. And now when we're working together this time, we started looking at bringing her events to trade shows. Right. And so a trade show is depending on the size of the event, is either a $20,000 to $50,000 event. Right. So if she wants to make 7 figures, she would have to be selling at the lowest tier. She would have to be selling 5 ticketed events a day throughout the country, maybe more. And it's going to be a shit ton of work and really exhausting. She'd have to be selling hundreds of these $3,000 to $5,000 events, like 300 to 500 or 300-ish per year, right? If she wants to make $1 million, she could essentially be selling 20 $50,000 trade shows, right? So we need to prune where she puts her attention, right? And so actually, just on a coaching call just the other day, we were discussing, because she was so worried about losing this mid-tier that she was like kind of like getting in her own way about really focusing in on those top tier events. Right. And so this is where we have to really pay attention. Now, her business model could be fine. We don't necessarily have to cut anything out of it, but we do have to focus where her attention is going. And for a lot of people, that also might mean pruning out whole segments of their audience or segments of their offer suite, right? Like, a lot of times that's really what's required. When we're starting to want to charge really top dollar prices, it often requires that the whole business is going to make a little bit of a shift because we're going to have to redirect all of that attention to the places where the money is and where we want to be going. Okay. And so the last thing about this is most of the time when we want to be scaling our business and we want to be charging those top dollar prices, the vast majority of our attention is going to be going to the most premium offer at the highest price point. All right. All right. So let's talk about the 3 pillars of the top dollar method. All right. So it's audience, offer, and price. Now, I want to point out that these 3 things, when it comes to being able to charge a premium price, these 3 things, like, they go together. They have to all make sense together. So let's start by thinking about the people that we're going to serve. So this audience, we have to identify who these people are. And we need to be talking to them at the level that they can afford to be buying this premium service. All right. Now, I want to talk about a fallacy here that a lot of times when I work with business owners, there's this thought pattern of like, well, if I charge less, then more people can afford to buy the services. And this is a fallacy on a couple different levels. So the first is that the size of your audience isn't the limitation. It's the amount of people that you can serve in a month, in a day, in a week, in a year. That's the real limitation, right? So like in my business model, I can serve a few hundred people a year total, right? Like that's the amount of people that I can put my loving attention on, right? And that's got nothing to do with them, right? So I essentially need to sell my offer to the women who can reasonably afford to buy it. But the idea that I'll get more clients if I charge less, it's like the limit isn't about their money. The limit is about my time and energy. Do you guys all see that? Does that track? All right. And so we have to choose these 3 things in a way that makes sense. And I'm going to just give you like a weird little example here, but I want you just to imagine going into a McDonald's. All right. Because I would say that most everybody can afford a burger from McDonald's. All right. So just imagine going into a Burger King or McDonald's. Okay. Now I want you to imagine that somebody in the middle class could probably afford like a TGI Fridays, a Chili's burger, like let's say a $10 to $20 burger. All right, so that's going to be probably double the price of a McDonald's burger. But the experience is different, right? Now I want you to imagine going into some fancy ass restaurant that's like on the docks of the new port, the port, I don't know, is that, yeah, like, where all the slips are and all the boats are, right? There's a restaurant called 41 North. And one day I took my daughter and her friends there, not realizing anywhere near how fucking fancy this was. And I paid $200 for me and 2 9-year-olds to eat lunch. You guys, they didn't appreciate it. And honestly, the whole thing, we got so deep. We were already there. We were sitting down before I opened the menu. I was like, oh, I thought this was it used to be a different restaurant. But anyhow, this is where I'm going. So just imagine you're there. It's super fancy. There's champagne flutes like on the table, right? And all 3 of these things, you're essentially selling a burger, but the experience is different. And who walks into those restaurants is different. You guys, so I want you to just imagine who's walking into a McDonald's, who's walking into a TGI Fridays, and who's walking into 41 North. Or whatever fancy ass burger place that you know. All right. So this is where we need to be thinking about these things, right? Because just because somebody can afford to go to when somebody can afford to go to 41 North, very likely, even though they can afford to go to McDonald's, they're probably not going there. Right? How many of you are regularly eating at McDonald's because you're like, it's the cheapest option, therefore it's the one that I want? No, probably not, right? Like that's usually not how it goes. People are generally buying things kind of at the top of their price range. We need to figure out who we're working with because this is why your audience, your price, and your offer all have to match. Because if we were to try to sell, let's say a $10,000 product to somebody who only somebody who makes 50,000 in a year, this is gonna be a real tough sell. It's gonna be a real tough sell. Even if they want it, even if they can see the value, it's just gonna be a hard trigger for somebody to pull. And so this is where I'm talking, like, we have to make sure that it all aligns because if we're selling a $10,000 offer, we want to make sure that we're selling it to people who can afford to buy it. All right. This sounds real simple when I say it out loud. I hope you guys are tracking. All right, now the last point that I want to make here is that sometimes people will distrust the price that's too low, right? Especially when it comes to transformation work or coaching work, right? Like if I was to see somebody selling $50 coaching sessions, I would never hire them. Is that because they're a bad coach? No, but it's because I charge thousands of dollars an hour for a coaching session. So what I'm gonna be thinking they should hire me, right? And that sounds a certain kind of way, but that's literally how we're thinking about things. So I do want you to understand that the price point has to match the audience. All right, so let's talk about the offer. So when we're thinking about our offer, when it comes to making like the top dollar, we can either do one of two things or some combination of both. So we can either have a leveraged offer, which is going to be like a one-to-many offer. So that could be like a live event where I'm going to teach, my money-making magic to 100 people at once, right? So I'm showing up one time, but I have 100 people paying a ticket price, right? And so obviously this is leveraged. I can offer a group program. This is leverage. And I could charge really high premium prices. And so this is also good for transformation work, one-to-one work, consulting work, done for you work, right? We can charge a really premium price, or we could do some combination of both, right? So like later on in this talk, I'll talk to you guys about Limitless Wealth. So Limitless Wealth is my hybrid offer, and I work with business owners who are in the process of scaling. And so it's a combination offer. So some of the work is leveraged, right? We have group calls, we have group work, we have group events, group retreats, right? And some of the work is one-on-one. Clients get one-on-one WhatsApp access to me, and clients get one-on-one, meetings with me to some extent. So there's the hybrid, all right? So we can either go really leveraged or we can go the premium prices. So when it comes to the offer, this part is what we need to understand is that nobody's buying our deliverables. They're buying a result. So clients are buying outcomes. They're buying a result, an outcome, and that might be more money, more time, better life, more fun, great skin, like fucking whatever. But they're not buying the process, all right? So the calls, the modules, the meetings, what you put into the result is not the thing that you're selling. And we're going to talk more about this as we go, but the offer has to be really structured where the result that somebody gets is the forefront of what you're thinking about, not like the number of meetings or the number of calls or how many hot dogs. Like it's going to be what are they getting, right? And so we want to be thinking about that, because that's the difference. Like that's the core difference between a premium offer and something else. So it's the result. All right, so then price. So there are some literal math things that you're going to need to do to set the price, right? You have to know your cost. If there's cost of goods, if there's cost of time, if there's cost of sales, cost of marketing, all of that needs to get factored in. That's why you need to do some of the KPIs to be able to figure these things out. But the premium pricing works. It works when you have an offer that your premium buyers want, right? So when your premium buyers can see that this offer is worth more to them than this price, easy peasy. Now, if those three things don't match, it doesn't work, right? So if you're selling an offer, the people who can't afford it, you're going to get price objections. If you're selling an offer, but you're only conveying the deliverables and the people can't see why it's worth a premium price, you're going to get a price objection. And so this is where most people go, because and I want to say one other thing, is a lot of times when it comes to really doing premium prices, people want to count other people's money. They want to think about what they can afford and what they pay for. And that's like an entirely wrong way of doing it, right? Like I work with clients oftentimes that make way more money than me. They can afford something different. I have clients where we took their business from 1 million to 10 million in a couple of years. I'm bumbling a little bit, but we need to get these three things to make sense. So what does not work? Let me just tell you guys some things that don't work. So if your offers pricing and messaging or offers pricing and audience don't match, it's not going to work. You're going to get price objections. If you just raise the price without ever changing your messaging, it's not going to work. You're going to kill your business. It's going to be bad news for everybody. We have to adjust the positioning and adjust the messaging as we go. All right. So listen, when I'm working with clients, one of the things that I'm really, really good at as far as marketing goes is I'm really good at messaging. So a lot of times when the clients are working with me, obviously we put the plan together for their business. How are we going to get their business to go from here to here, right? And so this is strategy. This stuff's simple, right? Like there's 1,000 strategies, and I want to point out that they all fucking work. They all fucking work. We have the strategy. Then we need to work on the inner bit, because this is where we can either hold it or we can't, right? We're either the leader, we're either the salesperson, or we're the person who can handle it, or we're not, right? And so we have to grow these two things together. Now, as we do this, we have to get so clear on how to sell this result, because we want to make sure, because I'm like, listen, when you do the strategies, you guys, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars learning how to do marketing, and most of it's super nuancy things, all right? It's super like in the subconscious, it's super ethereal. So when it comes to selling this, one, we need to be crystal clear on the result. Now, I want to point out the difference between the result of something and what you put into it, right? Or your credentials or your experience. Like people will say things like, there's like a little meme that goes around. It's like the airplane wasn't working and they sent in all these people to try to fix it and they couldn't fix it. One guy walks in and he bangs one little time, with the hammer and sends the bill for 10,000. They're like, it only took you 2 seconds to get here. It only took you 2 seconds to do this. And he was like, yeah, but it was 30 years of experience. And listen, that's valid, but also the cost of not having your airplane running is the real, like, it's the benefit of having your airplane running versus the cost of not having it run, right? I can come in and I can fix this problem in 5 minutes and you can be up and running. That's the result, right? And I want to just point this out because a lot of times business owners want to talk about their credentials or why they're the most amazing or whatever else. And it's like all of that stuff only matters to the extent that it makes people believe that you can help them achieve this result reliably, right? Like I've been doing this work for 10 years. I don't think I've ever had anybody ask if I have a college degree. I don't think I've ever had anybody actually ask me my credentials. Why am I credentialed to do this? Right? Because it's my results. Is that I've been talking about it all over the place for the last 10 years. I've fucking published a book, right? So that's it. You guys see the difference? I hope you guys are tracking with me. Okay. So when we're going to communicate this, so when it comes to selling the premium price, the offers with the premium price, we have to be able to communicate value to the buyer. And again, this is not about deliverables. All right. I'm going to give you a tiny little story. Years ago, I used to sell an offer that was $6,000 and when I was doing more money coaching. And so this woman buys my offer and then she has a moment of buyer's remorse, right? She calls me a few hours later and she's like freaking out a little bit. And she's like, I did the math and like, you're charging like $1,000 a meeting and like, that's it on. I don't like that. Like, I don't essentially want to pay you that. And I was like, ba-ba-da-ba-ba. And she's like all worked up because she's essentially like done the math in such a way where she's worked out my hourly rate. Right? And so she's like, that's wild. I'm not paying that. So I was like, listen, we did the math. You have a problem that costs you between $3,000 and $6,000 a month. And she's like, yeah. So I was like, depending on how that goes, that's about 40, 50, over the course of a year, there's about $40,000 or $50,000 that you lose to bad habits, to this, to that. And we went over the things that were all true. She's like, yeah. And I said, the solution to that problem is $6,000. Do you want it or not? We have to look at these things because what she was buying was the solution. Right? And then she was like, well, I just want to book your one-on-one meetings and pay you $250. And I was like, literally, that's not available. That's not what I do. That's not what I charge. So anyways, I just want to really hammer this in because this is the place when I'm working with my clients, they'll send me their messaging. And we always want to make sure that we're talking about value in terms of what they get, the speed that they get it, how easy it is to get it, the value, the ripple effect, the benefit to their family, the benefit long-term, the benefit to their communities, their status increase, their future like the projection of their future life, because this is really what they're buying. Nobody gives a shit how many meetings it takes. And no, every now and then you go a little pushback, like I'm telling you that I did, but like the number of meetings the number, like this sort of stuff, the stuff that I put into it is just the it's just the vehicle. It's just the vehicle. This is the destination. So we always want to be talking to the destination, right? Okay. So some things that increase value to buyers are going to be speed, right? Like let's just think about this in terms of a dentist. You could go to the dentist, or do you want the dentist to have you in there all day to prove their value to you? If somebody said I could fill this cavity in 4 minutes flat, or I could take 4 hours to fill this cavity, it's the same job. Which one do you want? Would you be willing to pay extra for the speed of the 4-minute cavity fill rather than the 4-hour cavity fill? Right? I don't want to be there 4 hours. A lot of times people get in their own way. They have a lot of trouble. So if we can sell ease around something, people are generally willing to pay to make it easier, right? This is why people pay for TSA, pay for global entry, pay to cut the line, pay for the conveniences. It makes it easier. We can look at the ripple effects of our offers. So when I talk about limitless wealth, the reason that people hire me is because we scale their business and we scale their personal development at the exact same time. And so as their business grows, they're able to hold it. We avoid self-sabotage. It happens faster. It happens easier. We generally cut back the work. We make it more fun. We make it, and we do work to help us like live our lives fully, right? But in doing that, oftentimes clients end up with better marriages. Do I work with people on their marriages? No, but the same work applies to all areas of life, right? And so even though I don't necessarily lead with that because it would make my marketing muddy, I know the value of a good marriage. And I can communicate that when somebody's, when I'm in a sales call and they're like, complaining about their spouse, right? A lot of times my clients' kids benefit financially. A lot of times as my clients change their money habits and they get really clear, they start to see changes for their children, right? So this is a ripple effect, right? Is that what I did? No, I didn't necessarily do that, but as she changes, the whole system changes, right? And so we start to see the ripple effect. So we want to make notes about these things. We want to really understand this. So that way, when you're on your sales calls and you're talking to people and you can be like, oh, and your kids are doing X, Y, Z. And as you change your example, that's part of the benefit, right? I'm not necessarily inviting kids to my meetings, but somehow that's the ripple effect. And we want to keep track of this for ourselves because as you do more and more sales, a lot of times it's great to just drop that little nugget in there. We'll drop it in. All right. So we want to talk about like if there's a cost to not making a change or not doing the things, we want to talk about that, right? Because then now we have something to compare, right? So if I'm charging really premium prices around something, well, what's the cost of not getting the speed, the ease, the help of the service? And it depends on what you do, right? So that would be different for everybody. We also want to be focused on their status and their future self, because these are things that people really consider when they're making these kinds of purchases. So how are we helping them get the upgraded life that they want? So when we can add these different layers to the thing, when we can add these different layers of value and help the clients see these layers of value, then it makes the premium price a great deal. So even if it's expensive to buy, even if the price is a big number, when you look at all of the value and you look at all of the cost of not getting the help or dicking around longer with a problem or XYZ, then it starts to look really, really good, right? So many of my clients, they come to see me and they want to scale, and they've done masterminds and they've done 1,000 different marketing things. And so what's interesting, so in Limitless Wealth, a lot of times when people come to see me, they've tried all of these different strategies. And what's interesting is all the strategies work, but if she can't hold it, what she'll do is she'll throw the strategy away when it doesn't work instantaneously, and then hire somebody else to teach her a new strategy, and this shit gets real expensive. Oftentimes also when people are doing the scaling, they'll get a mindset coach. And now listen, working on your mindset is critical. I do a lot of mindset work with clients, but if we don't work on our emotional range, if we don't work on our energetics, if we don't work on a nervous system regulation, the mind isn't enough. It's not enough to help us grow as big as we need to grow. It's just not enough. So it's like there's 4 things that are really important and you're doing one of them and you're wondering why it's not working. right? And so a lot of times, a decent mindset coach is going to cost you fucking 10, 20,000 when you're in scaling, when you're at the level of scaling a business, right? And so if you've done that and it's still not been able to scale, this stuff really, really adds up. That's why people come to see me, because when we look at the whole business in terms of the life and we look at the whole person, it's why it works when it hasn't worked before. You know what I mean? So anyways, okay. So this is, all right. So we have to always be selling the result and conveying the value. All right. So that's the fourth point of this. All right. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the marketing. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to just tell you guys about Limitless Wealth. So Limitless Wealth is my offer right now that I'm working on. And this offer is best for people who already have a service-based business. She's already making some money in her service-based business. And this isn't her first rodeo. She's pretty clear about things. And so when we work together, the first thing that I like to do with clients is I like to do a 10x business expansion plan. And so basically what we do for this was we work together to create the plan. And so this is a dual-sided plan. So on one side, we work on the offers, the messaging, the pricing, the structure, right? All of the things that we're talking about today. And on the other side, we look at her mindset, we look at her emotional range, we look at her energetics, and we put together basically a personal growth plan that matches the business plan, and the business plan also matches her plan for her lifestyle, right? So we put together this plan. And then some clients will choose to work with me and we'll execute it on over the course of the year. And some clients will take their plan and they go. But I like to work with my clients. Limitless Wealth is a long-term and it's kind of an intimate container. So I just like to work with people first, make sure they like me, make sure I like them, make sure that, make sure everything just fucking feels good. And then we decide from there. So if you want to work with me to put together your plan, I shall drop a link in wherever they go, in the chat. And then we could talk about it from there. All right. All right. So let's talk about the marketing and messaging. All right. Well, all right, I'm just going to do like a quick little recap. So we started this. Now, the first thing that we did was we got clear. We started with the end in mind, right? We figured out the math. We figured out the KPIs. We figured out how much money we want to make, how hard we want to work. Then we start to look at where my business is, what's going on, and then we start to do the pruning. We start to figure out what's not for me anymore. Then we get the offer, the pricing, and the audience to all match up. And we know that if the price, if it's too high, you're going to say no. If it's too high or too low, you're going to freak your audience out. It has to be just right. And the same thing for the offer. Okay. So then when it comes to selling this, we're conveying the value. When it comes to doing the marketing and the messaging, this part, if you get it right, will lower your ad costs and will be really, really clear. You'll have an audience that is exactly the right people. If you don't nail this, you're going to have more people following you and they're going to be less likely to buy. Okay, so when we're thinking about doing the marketing and the messaging for these things, what we need to do is we need to really deeply understand our audience. We need to understand, who is this person? What are his or her problems, fears, desires, obsessions? What are they worried about? What keeps them up at night? What do they want? What's their future? What's the future thing that they want? What's the status increase that they want? Where are they going on vacation? What do they want that they don't have? We want to get really, really clear on this. And listen, if you don't know this person, this is really for somebody who's not brand new. Like when I'm working with people, if we've already talked to 100 people, you know your clients, right? So this is the work of finding out who these people are, right? And so when we talk to them, we want to make sure that in our messaging and our marketing, we're talking exactly to that right person all the time, because that's what catches somebody's attention online, right? There's 1,000 different ways to market, right? And every time you scroll your Facebook feed, somebody's trying to get your attention. And if it's clear that they're not talking to you, you just scroll by. But if they demonstrate that they deeply understand what's going on for you and they deeply understand your problems, your fears, your obstacles, your challenges, then you're like, oh, this lady gets it. And from there you get somebody's curiosity and you get their attention, you get their willingness to read your page or click on your ad or, consume something that you've made, right? Now, if you've been talking to people for a long time, what I would encourage you to do is take notes on the exact things that people say. And the reason that you want to do this is because when you put that into your marketing, that inner monologue, right? People are like, oh my God, I feel like we've known each other for years, right? And this is a thing. This is a thing that I'm super, super good at. So many clients have hired me and they're like, dude, I feel like you literally hear what I think to myself when I'm at Target or when I'm doing this in business or whatever else. So keep notes when you talk to your clients. All right. Now, the better you are at this, what will happen is your marketing is going to draw in the people who are the right audience, willing to pay the right price, willing to buy the offer. And it's basically going to repel the people who are not that. And that's like literally what you want. Good marketing is both a draw for the exact people and a repellent for the wrong people. Okay. Now I just want to point out if you have to start I'll give you an example. So I was doing money coaching for a long time. I'm now doing business coaching. And so it's very similar in many ways. It's not a wild change, but it's enough of a change that my audience changed. My ad account, like my advertising audiences changed. And so it takes a minute. And I just want to point that out because as you build up a new audience for something, it does take a minute, right? The client I was telling you about earlier. So when she sells ticket events, those go to the vast public, right? Her audience for the private events is a different audience, right? So this is just going to ladies who would buy a thing. This is going to the people in decision or people who make decisions around either parties or events of some style. And now she's doing trade shows, right? So it's a whole new audience. So when she goes to do this, she has to find that audience. It's going to take a minute. And I just want to point that out because this doesn't happen to my clients because we don't let it happen. But a thing that happens is a lot of times people will switch their audience. So now they have all these assets that now become irrelevant. We just need to build things in a way where our money flow still works as we scale. Okay, so a couple other things we need to consider when it comes to the marketing and the messaging is where are your people? Are they on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram? If you are marketing, let's say products to 20-year-olds, you might be on Snapchat or I don't know, other places that 20-year-olds hang out. If you're marketing to an older, people in their 40s or 50s, might be something a little bit different. So we have to figure out where you want to be, but also how your people consume content. So like, for example, my audience likes a class. Sometimes they like a short video. They like an auditory thing. Right? My clients tend to be a little bit older. They have a little bit of an attention span. It all works out. Where that might not be the same if you were working with moms of super small children. They might need 5-minute bits of content, right? And so when we think about the marketing, there's going to be some fundamental stuff like what platforms are we doing this in, magazines or online or whatever. The amount of time and energy that somebody's going to give to this. That's another thing to consider. And then also just how we speak to them and how we deliver them value and how we get them to see that we are the ones that can help them solve their problem. And also if this is a problem that people have been trying to solve for a very long time, they also need to understand why, if they work with us, it will be different, right? Like, let's just think about this. How many of you guys have been on 100 diets since 7th grade? I don't know. We have a really small audience here, but I'm just saying so if you were going to buy somebody's weight loss product, your mind is going to be like, girl, right? And so that's we have to have an explanation for that, why this time will be different. So when we're selling really premium prices, the expectation that you're going to close between 30 and 50% is about right. If you're closing significantly higher than that, if you're closing like 70 to 100%, chances are you probably need to somewhere between double and quadruple your price for the value of the thing that you're offering. And as you raise your prices, your close ratio will also shift. All right. And I just want to point that out because sometimes people who've been selling stuff at lower, like a low price compared to the value, once they raise their price, their close ratio changes and then they start freaking out. And I'm like, no, that's part of this is that you're going to work with less people at a higher price. That's how we work less, right? Like that's how we get the 4-hour work days. We charge a premium price and then we're not, working with every single person. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the mindset around really top dollar pricing. So what I tell people, what I tell my clients to do is to keep a spreadsheet of the results that people get. And like I was talking about before, the ripple effect, the long term. Sometimes my clients will call me 5 years after we've worked together and tell me the whole trajectory of their life change. And I just keep mental note, keep a little spreadsheet on that, keep the results. Because what this does for me on a mindset level is it gives me so much certainty about how I know that I can help these people. I have a ton of certainty because I have built a whole case around this. So when somebody gives me a price objection, you're not going to wobble me with it because I know full fucking well that it's worth it to you, not worth it to me. It's not like my time is worth it. And it's not like I'm saying I know my worth. I'm saying, oh no, this is going to fucking change your life. You got to pay the lady. And you don't want it, fine. There's a steadiness that comes from me having all of this evidence. So I suggest that you build the evidence, because when you go to do the sales, if you're raising your price and then you're wobbly and you're energetically unsure, can I deliver this change, this value, this whatever at this price? And you're not sure, they're going to pick that up. And it's going to kill your sales. So as you keep a detailed log of their tangible values, and listen, what I set like a number to it. And did I pull that number out of my ass? Yes, I did. Right? Like I had a client call me back after we finished working together. This client, her income went from 3,000 to 18,000 in about a year. Her kids were borrowing money from her. She had like adult, like young adult children, and they were always in trouble financially, and she was bailing them out, and that all stopped. So I just kind of like, so the value is what, 12,000 a month is 120,000 for the year. She made a ton of money. And then it's like the value of the kids, I don't know, I just make a best guess. But I start to keep notes on these things anyways, because it just helps me to feel solid, right? This helps us anchor into the truth that the offer that we're selling is like, you want to know that your offer is worth 10 times, 100 times worth the price. Because the more that you believe its value is, and some of these values aren't necessarily going to have like an exact monetary, is what I'm saying when you make the number up, can convey all of this value. The price looks small, right? So you want to make sure that you see 100 times or 50 times or whatever the value of the price. Right? And so this helps you to be able to convey all that with so much confidence. So the mindset around this is going to be really, really important. If you wobble, they're going to wobble, and chances are it's very likely going to kill your sale most of the time. So if I'm saying, like if I'm wobbly when it's time to close the sale, it's just no bueno. Now listen, I also want to point out here that sometimes people will want the thing. They might even be able to see the value of the thing, and they still might not be able to pull the trigger financially, right? Like just last year, we were offering something, and this lady calls and she wants to buy it, and she literally doesn't have the money to buy it. She tried to get a loan, she couldn't get the loan. She didn't have the cash. So it's like, all right, this is where we have to be really gentle with our sales process, because if we go too hard with people too fast, a lot of times we can burn the bridge a little bit, right? And so when we're selling premium things, we have to know that a lot of times people are going to want it for a while. They're going to have to save up for it a lot. Sometimes people are going to take out a loan to work with you. And we just have to have compassion and softness for that. So that way, if somebody wants to come back in 6 months, they're welcome to do so. We don't sell them so hard that they never come back, right? And a lot of times if you close somebody too hard, that'll be a thing that's there. All right. So there's a couple other concepts here that I'll explain. So there's permission, worthiness, and deserving. And in Limitless Wealth, I go deep into these topics with clients pretty regularly. But permission is your permission that you give yourself to want things, to feel worthy of things, to be the top dollar, whatever it is that you do, to be the best in your field. You have to give yourself permission to be that lady. Nobody's going to give it, no one's going to give that permission to you. And oftentimes when you look at like the best in an industry, what's the difference between them and somebody else? Is just really that they gave themselves permission. They believe that they're the best. They see that value and they hold that value. So it's an internal permission. And this is the same thing for worthiness and deserving, right? Because when you charge top dollar pricing, especially when you start charging prices that you yourself wouldn't or couldn't pay, sometimes you'd be like, do I deserve this much money? Can I charge this much money? Am I worthy of it? Blah, 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 blah. And so this is a place where again, we want to make sure that we keep our eyes on the value that they get and keep our eyes off of ourselves. Like if we look at like, am I worthy? Am I good enough? Do I deserve it? Like it's like you're looking at yourself to sell, like your focus is in the wrong direction. So you want to make sure that when you're selling to people and you're conveying these, that your focus is on them and how you're going to help them and what you're going to do for them. And you want to keep that attention off of yourself, because if you start looking at your pockets when you're selling to them, it doesn't work. Right. And another thing, and I'll just give you one more tip here, is when you're selling to them, you also don't want to be counting their money. You want to be conveying the value on this thing. You don't want to be deciding, oh, is this too expensive for her to buy? It's like, it's none of your fucking business. It's the entire line of thinking will just cause a lot of friction in this. All right. So when we're doing these things, we want to make sure that our focus is in the right place, which is going to be on serving them and serving them gently. So if now's not the time and they want to come back in 6 months, they still feel like you're welcoming them, not like, like the bro marketing, the bro salesman. Sometimes they're such a turn off when you don't buy. All right. So we'll just go over the key takeaways. So we want to make sure that we start with the end in mind. We want to make sure that as we're charging our premium prices, that we can get to our goals by doing this. Get to our goals financially and also get to our goals in terms of lifestyle. We want to be aligning our audience offer and our price and our marketing for scalable success, right? And so the marketing, the messaging, the offer, the price, the audience, those things all need to match perfectly. And if one of those is out of alignment, it's gonna hurt your sales. So when it comes to really charging top dollar pricing, we need the audience that can afford it. We need an offer that's of high value to this person. We need to know how to convey the value. We need to be able to market to those people specifically. So we need to be using the language problems, fears, desires, status increases that they want to be using. We need to be showing up where they are, right? And when it's all in a line, it moves fast, it's easy to do. It's when shit's all over the place, that's where this gets really hard. All right. And then we need to work on your certainty, right? So you're going to keep tabs on the value that it is and all of the things. So that way, when you go to sell this thing, you can convey all of the value. So that way the value looks really fat and juicy compared to the little dinky price, even if the little price is 50 grand or 100 grand or whatever it is you're charging. All right. So that is all the things. All right. So I love you. I appreciate you. If you want to work with me, the link is there. Oh, and also I'll mention one more thing. We're doing a retreat that's coming up in January. This is the Unconditional Wealth Retreat. And what we're going to be working on is a lot of the advanced level mindset work around breaking down how the mind can kind of cause problems, obstacles, delays, conditions, and just kind of really block our money in a lot of ways. We have a luxury villa. We have a private chef. We're going to go on fun adventures. It's going to be really, really delicious in terms of experience and in terms of outcome. So if you want to come to that, Ash will have a link, but you can, if you want to like talk to me about that too, we could just, book a time. All right. And I appreciate you. And next time, I don't know what we're talking about next week, but we'll be here next week. All right. Bye, everybody.